What if two of the most misunderstood diagnoses in women's health, PCOS and complex PTSD, weren't just coexisting, but actually feeding off each other? If you've been diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome and you've also experienced chronic stress, trauma, or complex PTSD, you are not imagining the connection. There is a real biological link between what happened to you and what's happening in your body. Today, we're going to break that down. No jargon, no shame, just answers. So, I'm Laura Giles, and if this is your first time here, welcome. Let's get into it. Let's do a quick overview for anyone who is new to either of these terms. PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, is one of the most common hormonal disorders affecting people with ovaries. It's characterized by elevated androgens, that's male hormones like testosterone, irregular or absent periods, and often small cysts in the ovaries. But PCOS is so much more than a reproductive issue. It affects metabolism, mental health, skin, hair, weight, and energy. And here's what most doctors don't tell you: it's deeply tied to the stress response system. Now, CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder, is different from standard PTSD. While PTSD often stems from a single traumatic event like an accident or an assault, CPTSD develops from prolonged repeated trauma. Think childhood abuse or neglect, domestic violence, emotional manipulation over years, or growing up in a chaotic or unsafe environment. CPTSD doesn't just leave psychological wounds, it rewires your nervous system. And that rewiring has physical consequences, including hormonal ones. Here's where it gets really interesting, and this is really important. Both PCOS and CPTSD involve a dysregulated stress response system, specifically something called the HPA axis, and that stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That is your body's central stress command center. When you experience chronic trauma or ongoing stress, your HPA axis goes into overdrive. Your body pumps out high levels of cortisol, your primary stress hormone, and cortisol, when chronically elevated, causes a cascade of hormonal disruptions. It raises blood sugar and promotes insulin resistance, a core driver of PCOS. It increases androgen production, which worsens PCOS symptoms like acne, hair loss, and irregular periods. It suppresses ovulation, which is why so many people with PCOS struggle with their cycles. And it creates systemic inflammation, which researchers now link to both PTSD and PCOS. In other words, chronic trauma dysregulates your stress hormones, and dysregulated stress hormones can trigger or significantly worsen PCOS. A 2021 study published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology found that women with PCOS had significantly elevated cortisol reactivity compared to those without, even when controlling for other factors. That's not a coincidence, that's biology. And research into CPTSD consistently shows blunted or dysregulated cortisol patterns, where the body either pumps out too much or eventually too little as it burns out from chronic activation. In either state, throws your reproductive hormones completely off balance. So, if the science is there, why does almost no one talking about this? Because, well, there's a few reasons. First, medicine still largely treats the body and mind as separate systems. You see your gynecologist or endocrinologist for PCO. You see your gynecologist or endocrinologist for PCOS, and you see your therapist or psychiatrist for CPTSD. Rarely do those conversations happen in the same room. Second, PCOS is heavily under-researched. It affects roughly 1 in 10 people with ovaries worldwide, and yet it took until 2023 for the first major international evidence-based guidelines to be published. We are decades behind. Third, trauma, especially childhood trauma, is still deeply stigmatized. Many people don't disclose it to their doctors, and many doctors don't ask. The results? Millions of people are treating their PCOS symptoms, metformin, birth control, without ever addressing the trauma, the nervous system dysregulation that may be driving those symptoms in the first place. And this is not your fault. This is not the whole picture. And here's the good news. And there really is good news. Understanding this connection opens up a completely different approach to healing, one that addresses the root, not just the symptoms. If you have PCOS and a trauma history, here are the things worth exploring with your care team. Trauma-informed therapy. Modalities like EMDR, somatic therapy, and internal family systems have strong evidence for regulating the nervous system. And a regulated nervous system means a healthier HPA axis, which means better hormones. Nervous system support, so things like breath work, cold exposure, yoga, and even gentle walks, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode, which directly counters the cortisol overdrive of C-PTSD. Anti-inflammatory nutrition, both PCOS and trauma-related inflammation respond well to a diet rich in omega-3s, fiber, and whole foods, and low and ultra-processed foods and refined sugars. This isn't about restriction. It's about supporting your body's ability to regulate itself. Advocating for integrative care. Ask your doctors to look at the full picture. Bring up your trauma history or ask them to consider it. You deserve a provider who sees you as a whole person. Healing from C-PTSD is not linear. Managing PCOS is not simple. But when you start treating them together as the connected experiences that they are, many people find that they both improve. So I want to leave you with this. Your body is not broken. Your body's responding rationally to what it has been through. PCOS and CPTSD are not character flaws. They're not your fault. And they are not the end of the story. If this video resonates with you, please share it, because I genuinely believe that there are people out there who have never heard of this connection. They have never heard it explained, and they need to hear it today. So subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourself.